Welcome to the Bar Exam Toolbox podcast. Today we are talking about how to support your significant other or loved ones during the bar exam. Your Bar Exam Toolbox hosts are Alison Monahan and Lee Burgess. That's me. We're here to demystify the bar exam experience so you can study effectively, stay sane, and hopefully pass and move on with your life. We're the co-creators of the Law School Toolbox, the Bar Exam Toolbox, and the career-related website Career Dicta. Alison also runs the Girls Guide to Law School. If you enjoy the show, please leave a review on your favorite listening app and check out our sister podcast, the Law School Toolbox podcast. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach us via the contact form on barexamtoolbox.com, and we'd love to hear from you. And with that, let's get started.
Welcome back. Today, we're sharing some tips for the bar exam significant other. So, of course, the bar exam is incredibly challenging for you, the person actually taking the bar, but many significant others or close friends and family find being around a bar studier to be, well, kind of challenging, shall we say.
Shall we say.
So, years ago, we published some blog content on this topic, and we actually still get a lot of questions and comments about it. So, clearly, this is something people are thinking about. Your loved ones are struggling to deal with you. So you can either share some of these tips with them so that they can help you, or feel free to point them to this podcast and they can listen on their own.
Yeah, or they can read some of the comments, the lengthy comments on some of these posts.
We get people emoting.
We also do. There's a lot of like relationship advice being asked for.
And I think in general it's because people actually do want to help. They just don't really know how.
I think that's true. So first, I think it's important as the bar studier to understand why it is hard to be around someone studying for the bar.
And to recognize you're probably not at your best.
You're not your best self. You're
No.
not. I wasn't my best self.
I think it would be a very, very rare person who is their very best self while the process of studying for the bar exam.
Yeah. So I think, the first thing to note is you're going to be stressed. I think everybody's stressed when they're studying.
Yeah, it's not a pleasant process.
No. You often might seem to be distracted because you're a little bit self-absorbed and selfish because you're working towards this one, very significant goal. And
Yeah, I mean, you have to be selfish.
Yeah.
That's kind of the only way you're going to pass.
Exactly. So that can be frustrating to be around because you're not taking into consideration a lot of other people's feelings because you're very focused on what you're doing and the importance of what you're doing.
Right. And it's easy to allow the importance of what you're doing to also grow outside of the scope of really it's just a test.
Yeah. Well, keeping it in perspective is a whole different problem. But I think for most people studying, it's the major thing happening.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's a balance. You do have to be selfish, but also at the same time, you have to keep perspective and realize that, you're not saving the world right now.
No. I think some people might feel like they're, possibly borderline depressed while they're studying.
True.
I think my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time that I was studying for the bar exam, came home one night and I was laying on the couch in the dark watching TV. And he said I looked like an antidepressant commercial because I had this blank stare on my face.
The blue light.
The blue light of flashing on my face. And he's like, what?
A blanket.
Yeah. He's like, what is happening to my girlfriend?
Yeah, she used to be fun. What happened?
Yeah. He even said as part of our wedding vows, I knew that I wanted to marry you when you were completely insane studying for the bar exam, and I still loved you and wanted to be with you, or something along those lines.
That's very meaningful.
It was very meaningful. Yeah. So they notice. You're probably also tired because you're working really hard. And I think if you're working and studying at the same time, which a lot of repeat takers are, I think that's even a bigger deal, that you're exhausted. And so you're not going to have as much energy to, invest in other people.
Right. And just mental fatigue, if nothing else. I mean, it's amazing how tired you can get just sitting at a desk studying for 8 hours a day.
It's exhausting. I think a lot of times bar studiers only want to talk about the bar and what happens when they're studying for the bar. I had a friend of mine who is a professional musician, and she's married to him now, but she was dating someone who was studying for the bar. She joked that she was going to be qualified to take the bar by the time he got to the exam because she was helping quiz him. They were talking about it. She's like, I feel like I've studied for the bar.
I mean, she probably could have passed.
She probably could have passed. Yeah, she's a very smart person. I think that bar studiers always seem to have study materials with them.
Yeah, the like flashcards at dinner sort of
Right,
thing. You're like, really, just take a break.
I know. But I think it can be very omnipresent. You
Yeah.
can't get away from it because you're always got your study stuff around you. And when you're studying long hours, although, if you've been listening to this podcast and read our blogs, you know that we recommend that you don't just study all the time. You need to take breaks. But it can feel like you don't have enough time to connect with your loved ones. And that can be frustrating for the people who are trying to connect with you and count on you for things.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to also, even if you do say, okay, we're going to go on date night or whatever, it can be really hard to kind of wind down and not be so stressed out and like actually enjoy each other. I mean, I can definitely see your bar exam date night turning into a huge blow up fight because like you're stressed and you're tired and you're like, this other person is not doing whatever I need them to do right this second.
Yeah.
I took this time off to be with them and like now they've just ordered the wrong appetizer.
Yeah, it's good to go to a movie. Can't fight during a movie. Can't fight during a movie. So my funny story about my poor husband was, I'm the daughter of 2 lawyers. And so when I was studying for the bar, my parents came to visit for the weekend and they were very concerned about my husband. Like really concerned.
Not about you.
Not about me. They knew I'd be fine. But they were very concerned about him. And so they were like, how are you doing? And I'm like, hey, guys.
You're like, hey, I'm the one doing the work.
I'm the one doing the work. And
Sean's like, thanks for asking. Let me tell you. It's really bad.
She's super kooky. I also think my mom told him that he wasn't allowed to break up with me during the bar, no matter how bad things got. If he was going to break up with me, he had to do it after the test was over. So I didn't think that was on his to-do list, but my mom was very concerned about that. So, but they were very concerned about him because they had each been the bar exam significant other.
Right. Because
they went to law school at different times. And so they appreciated what it was like to live with someone who was studying for the bar. And, my husband didn't have lawyers in his family. So he's just kind of like, I thought you did well in law school. Like, why are you so
worried about it? I think that's like for many people studying one of the most frustrating things, whether it's parents or significant others saying, well, what are you so worried about? I mean, I'm sure you'll pass.
Right.
You're like, that is the most infuriating thing you could possibly say to me right now.
You don't understand. People from Harvard don't pass.
Yeah, that's not a pathway you want to go down.
No. So it's a lot, but I think, you should have awareness that as the bar studier, you are a lot and it's your job to try and like keep your own sanity. But I think you need to have compassion for the people that are around you and might depend on you, that you can be a lot. And, you probably need to take some time and think about what you can do to maybe make their life a little bit easier. So, Alison, you made the suggestion of like date nights or, carving out time and trying your best to be present, so that they can be reminded of the person that they did love going into this experience.
And I feel like also apologizing in advance.
Yeah, setting expectations. I think that is really important.
Just basically saying, you know what, the next 2 months, like, I'm probably not going to be my best self.
Right.
And I would appreciate your support.
Yeah.
And here are some ways that you could be supportive. And I also understand if you don't want to be around me.
Yeah. I mean, there are people who specifically like will try and leave town to study to just kind of free themselves from the obligations to people that they care about. But I think especially for repeat takers, life can often be much more complicated when you are sitting for the exam after multiple tries because life has continued on. You know? So you may have a job and you are studying. You may have a significant other and you are studying. You may be pregnant and you are studying. You may be
small children.
Have small children. You may have pets. You may have an ailing family member that you're caring for. I think that it's very important to realize that all of these folks need to be tended to, and they don't need to have no expectations. They just need to understand what you're going through, and then you need to carve out time to give them the minimum of what they need. Because when all this is over, you want your family life to still be here.
You don't have burned all of your bridges.
Exactly. Like these people still need to love you and be able to, to move on with you.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think everyone needs to recognize it's probably not going to be the happiest time of your relationship, but if you get through it, maybe you can actually strengthen things and, it's not like it's going to be the only hard thing you ever go through, probably.
And, when you go back through, if you do go through some of the comments of the people who've mentioned struggling with their significant others on some of these blog posts, a lot of them, the common I think experiences are that the bar studiers cut off their significant others because they just don't have space to give them energy. And I think that probably is a little extreme for most people.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the point if you're like, this person is actually just annoying me or whatever.
Right.
But I mean, I think ideally it's a balance. I mean, as with many things, I think communication and clarity are probably the key here.
Yeah.
And really just having that conversation of like, okay, what do we think this is going to look like?
Right.
I mean, it sounds like you were living with your now husband at the time.
Was,
so,
yes.
You don't have the option to just like not talk to him. You're going to see him.
Right. We actually moved in together just a few months before I studied for the bar. It was a big leap of faith.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried not to study at home. That was one of my things that I tried not to do.
Yeah, so I mean, let's talk through some sort of practical tips from either the perspective of the significant other, if you're listening to this, or, things you might want to offer if you're the bar taker that your significant other might consider.
Yeah. So I think if you're the significant other, I think this is a great opportunity for you to invest in other relationships.
Exactly.
Because your bar taker is going to be limited in their capacity to be the rock for you that you may want them to be. So it's a great time for a girls' trip or a guys' trip. To go visit college friends, to go visit family. It's just a great time.
To find a therapist.
I think it's a great time to do something else with somebody else.
Hobbies, it's a great time to join your soccer league. Take a class. Yeah, do a pottery class, whatever. Just get out of the house.
Train for like a race. Do one of those team and training things.
Yeah.
Because you have lots of time that you train for. I've never done one of those things, but my friends who do, they take a lot of time.
Yeah, and it's very bonding.
It is very bonding. So, it's a great time to invest in other social activities. I think you want to also think about carving out some time that you can do things with your significant other to get them away from studying and get them out of the house. So we recommend that all bar studiers take breaks. Even I know that some bar review companies, which thankfully do not listen to this podcast, would say, you have to study 7 days a week. We do not believe in that. We believe that you should take time off.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, I used to take every Sunday off when I was studying, and my goal was to do something that didn't involve me sitting at a desk and being at a computer.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say. I think you have to be careful, too, about what are you doing when you get out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
I think the suggestion to go to a movie is fantastic because that can, reset your brain.
Right.
Anything physical, going outside and hiking, biking, even just taking a long walk, maybe in a neighborhood that you're not so familiar with, so you're seeing new things. Try a new coffee place. It doesn't have to be super complicated, but just something that's going to reset. Go to a museum.
Ooh, cooking. Cooking could be fun.
True, although that probably doesn't get you out of the house. But
that's true.
You could at least go shop for ingredients. You could go to the farmer's market.
Yeah, go to the farmer's market.
Shop for your ingredients. Come back, pick a recipe. Yeah, exactly. Then you can actually cook for the weekend or for the week ahead, that kind of thing. Yeah, but I can see people I'm taking a break and now I'm just sitting around watching TV.
Yeah.
It's you need to do something a little more active.
Yeah. And so as the person who's not studying, I think it's a great idea to take it upon yourself to agree when those break times are going to be, and then come up with suggestions of things that you...
Yeah, actually make that plan.
Yeah, make the plan. Because the bar studier is not going to invest time in thinking of what are the 4 meals we can make ahead for the week and then go to the farmer's market.
Yeah, I mean, if you're distracted and someone's asking you questions about what... a friend of mine last week when I was moving kept asking me when are we going to go to Tahoe? And finally I was I can't think about this right now. This is not... But then she sent me something that was oh, well, if you want to buy this discounted ticket, here's the link. And I'm oh, great, I'll totally do that. And then we can plan our trip.
Yeah.
But there's just a limit to how many decisions you can make when you're in one of these scenarios.
Yeah. Decision fatigue and willpower fatigue are totally real things. And so as the person who is hopefully less stressed.
Right. And has more time.
That you can do these things. And if I think the cooking or the doing something out of the house or exercising or something like that, that's also going to help your bar studier because it's going to keep them like healthier
Right.
and happier, and then everybody is going to do better.
Yeah. The one thing I would caution you is definitely get buy-in on these things.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, don't spend a whole week planning some super elaborate trip to like go to the beach on a town that's down the road 2 hours and then be like, well, what do you mean you can't take all day Sunday
that's
off?
True. That's true. So
Plan ahead.
Plan ahead. Have honest dialogues about that. Another thing that you can do is, try and, especially if you live with your significant other, but try and take some responsibilities away from that person.
Right.
Make their life easier. Maybe
Cooking, cleaning.
If they do, if they do the laundry, offer to do the laundry while they are studying, something like that, just to lighten their load. So when they're not studying, they can be spending time with you or doing something fun. I think one of the traditions around bar prep that is great is the bar trip.
Oh yes, the one upside of having to take the bar exam
Exactly.
is you get to go on a vacation after.
Go on a vacation. And so I think it's a great idea to plan a bar trip. I did not plan my bar trip, and it was great.
Oh, I did.
Oh, you did?
Well, I mean, I took 2 bars. I took 2 bar trips.
Well, way to be an overachiever.
Well, I was like, I'll take this bar, but only if I get a trip out of it. No, actually, that's not true. I don't think I got it. No, that's not true. I took a bar trip and then I took a post-clerkship trip.
Okay.
When I took my second bar exam, I went back to work the next Monday.
No.
And that sucked.
Yeah, that does kind of suck. But I think it is great to, have that thing to look forward to. And if you're looking for things to fill the time while your significant other is studying, you can plan something that can, rekindle the fact that you like each other.
Right, exactly. And it's nice. I mean, I remember my friend got married the weekend after the bar. And so I literally got on a flight and flew to their wedding, which seemed kind of intense, but it was also great because I was just like, it's like a whole other world. I'm just out of that bar horribleness. And now I'm in my friends and hanging out and having something that was such a break.
Yeah.
It was really great because by the end of the wedding, you're basically completely overthinking about the bar exam. I think I then went to Honduras or something, but
yeah, I mean, I remember, I think 2 days post-bar, I was sitting in a bar in Dublin,
nice.
Drinking. And I just remember being thank goodness I am somewhere else drinking this amazing.
Yeah, I think just having, it doesn't have to be something amazing. It just has to be even going a weekend away, camping or whatever, something that resets.
Something that is not in your home or wherever you've been studying and is away from your books. Is
yeah, maybe
idea.
Offer to pack up their books for them.
Oh, that's a good
one. Put
one.
them into the garage.
Yeah, because those are scary to come home to.
Yeah, you don't want to see those again, but you also don't want to get rid of them in case you fail. That's actually, people have such hang-ups about that.
Oh, yeah.
They don't want to look at the books, but they also don't want to get rid of the books. I feel like that is definitely a task that, if you were the significant other, you could be like, why don't I put these into a plastic container with a lid so they'll be safe and take them out of your sight line?
Yeah.
That would be much appreciated.
I think it definitely is. If you are the bar exam studier, and you can't get your significant other to listen to this podcast, I think it is helpful to be very specific with your suggestions of how they can help, because I think what happens to a lot of people is if you're withdrawing because you need to do this very self-involved thing, which is to pass this test, it's very hard to not take that personally. So you need to be I can't do XYZ that we usually do, but I can do this.
Right.
And you could help me by doing this. Because I think a lot of the feedback we've gotten from, the comments on blog posts and talking to people who have been in this position is they're confused about what's going on.
Right. And to be honest, some of this might just be they're being lazy. Mm-hmm. But even then, particularly if, say, your significant other's used to you doing the emotional work and, and planning and managing the relationship, and suddenly you're not able or willing to do that, this could be a good opportunity for them to develop some of those skills.
That's true. It could be a growth opportunity.
Exactly.
Yeah. So something that I did not experience, but friends of mine did, was what do you do if you and your significant other are studying for the bar together?
That's a whole other level of hell.
It's a whole other level of hell. Because I think that this is a challenge on so many levels, because maybe you've dated through law school, so maybe you're even used to studying for exams together. But typically, my friends who had significant others in law school, they didn't take all their classes together. They weren't preparing exactly the same way. And the high stakes nature of the bar just kind of makes this whole situation much more complicated. So you want to really take in some considerations and talk about it very honestly and openly before, so you set each other up for success. So I don't know. What do you think are some suggestions of the conversation you should have before bar prep?
Well, I mean, number one, I think you've got to figure out where you're physically going to study and like how this is working or not working for you once you try it. So, is it possible that you can have separate workspaces in the same house? Do you want to study at home? Do you want to study in a library? Do you want to study in the same library? Do you want to study in adjoining cubicles? Do you want to be in completely different buildings? You've got to really think through this.
Yeah. And it's very easy to distract each other. I mean, I have tried to share an office with my significant other. We have both worked out of the home at the same time. I am incredibly distracting, not because he is distracted by me, but because I become distracting.
Well, let's face it, studying for the bar is not like the most fun and exciting experience. So if there is a possible distraction, most people will probably take it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're like, oh, well, we'll just, have a quick conversation about who's going to unload the dishwasher. And, oh, but maybe then we need to go for a coffee break. And then suddenly half the day is gone. You haven't actually studied.
Right. And so that can be problematic. So you want to, think about how you can set yourselves up for success. And it may be that one of the things you have to do is like studying at home is a no-go because there are too many opportunities for life distractions or talking to each other, or it makes home a safe place where you can kind of come back together and leave the studying to the side and not have to suffer through rehashing the study day once you're at home.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think this is one of those scenarios where each person really has to take responsibility for themselves.
Yeah. And
really figure out, like, okay, because maybe that you don't even do the same program or something, and then there can be anxiety around, are we making the right choices? And I mean, I have heard from some people who failed where they say they studied with a significant other and that person passed and they didn't, and they're upset about that for various reasons. Well, they made me do this, or it's like, no, they didn't make you.
Right.
You chose to do that.
Right. And it's also important to think if you're both studying, and especially if you share any sort of life responsibilities, you better lay out the game plan of like how stuff's going to get done.
Exactly.
Because if one person is in charge of like all the cooking and all of this stuff, there might be a lot of you might be resentful, and then if your results don't go well, you're going to be resentful. And that's not going to help anybody's relationship.
No. Yeah, no, I think you basically have to be like, this is what needs to happen. This is what I need.
Right.
And this is what it sounds like you need. And do we need to hire, a housekeeper? Do we need to get takeout? Like, what are the other alternatives here?
So just like with all significant others or family members, I think it's a good idea to kind of schedule fun study break activities. So, you guys can decide what you like to do together, but then agree maybe Sunday's your day off or Sunday afternoon's your day off and you're going to go do the thing that you like to do together. But, schedule it and block it off on your calendars and protect it because I think it can be very easy to just eat into that time. And that's a mistake because hopefully time with your significant other makes you feel better.
Hopefully.
And so investing in that time. If
you're both studying for the bar exam, I don't know.
But, investing in that time should kind of recharge your batteries. And so you want to be able to schedule that and protect that time.
Yeah, and I think along those lines, this is definitely a time to have self-compassion and also compassion for the other person. You can have your mantra of like, what we're doing is really hard, but I know that we're going to get through it and I appreciate your support or whatever. Like you can put that on a little poster board and read it every morning.
Yep.
Because it is a really hard experience. And I think, sometimes people maybe underestimate how unpleasant it's going to be, and then they feel bad, and there's added stress because they're like, well, we're fighting all the time, or we're stressed out all the time. It's like, of course you are. You're both studying for the bar. Like, what do you expect?
Right. And you just do not need that. You need to simplify that part of your life and try and table things.
Yeah, table big fights, big discussions.
Big decisions, like that can all happen typically.
Well, and sometimes people are also like moving, you've gotten a job someplace and you're moving. I mean, I hear those stories when people don't pass, like, well, we graduated and then we immediately had to move across the country and we're trying to set up a place and trying to study. And, you got to be realistic here.
Yeah. I think you have to be compassionate. And you also need to, make sure that you are being supported. So let's say your significant other isn't stepping up to be the person you wish they would be. That's cool. You're not going to fix them. So you need to go find other people who can provide you that support. Yeah,
exactly. It's like, if you have very different study styles, like you like to study in a group, your significant other prefers to go off into a closet in the library where they don't have to see anyone for a week. Maybe you need to find yourself a study group.
Right.
Like, it's cool. But you can't try to make that other person, come out of the closet and go study with you because that's what you'd prefer. Like, that's not their preference.
Yeah. And I think you really just have to own this experience for yourself. In the end, it's you alone in the exam room, and there's nothing you can do about, how your significant other's doing, about, because you had to do the laundry, you studied less. This is all about you being prepared.
Or I think people can do the flip side, which is like trying to take on all that emotional labor for this other person of like, Are they doing enough? Like, I'm scheduling, I'm going to make their schedule and make sure they study. It's like, you're not their parent.
Right.
Like, you're their significant other. Like, they're grown up. They need to deal with this.
Yeah.
And if they're not, well, that's probably a conversation you need to have.
Yeah. And sometimes you might find that you just really need to give each other space. Like, it is absolutely possible that you're not going to do great functioning in this environment, but it's temporary. Pass.
Literally, you can even move to a hotel for a couple of nights every now and then. Go to a friend's house who's not studying for the bar and use their spare bedroom for a couple of days. Like, that doesn't mean you don't care about each other. It just means you're driving each other nuts.
And I had friends in law school who, unfortunately, they're no longer married, but when we graduated, they were still dating, and they didn't speak to each other like during the bar days. Like you
mean during the exam days?
During the exam days. They were in different, we all took it at the same location, but they were like across the room. I'm like, what is she doing over there? And then someone's like, they're not speaking. I'm like, what? But they were really concerned that if something happened to one of them, that it would just snowball and then they would both be completely derailed. So they just chose not to speak for the California bar, which was then 3 days, which seems a little intense, but they both passed. So
I feel like you've got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. So I think a lot of this advice does apply to, other people who are depending on you. But overall, if you have children, if you have other family members who are depending on you, I think this idea of setting expectations up front before shit hits the fan.
Well, and that's also a place to pull in your support network. If you have children that need to be taken care of, you need to make sure they're taken care of one way or the other.
Yeah. But I think you have to have discussions with everyone in your universe about boundaries and what you need, and make sure you set yourself up for success. We've also heard from people who failed because, they've had a family member go through a crisis and then they've been very distracted by that. Well, life happens. There's nothing you can do about that. But as much as you know that certain of these challenging things are going to happen, or that individuals in your sphere need things from you, you just need to decide what those boundaries are going to be and try and set yourself up for success by being honest in the beginning.
Right. There's a difference between like a family member has a medical emergency and like you didn't think that anyone needed to go to the store to make food. It's like, okay, some of these are predictable. Like, let's figure out how we're going to eat. Let's figure out like how we're going to get the house clean. Let's figure out how we're going to do laundry. You need clothes, you need food, you need a place to live. Your car might need gas. Like, these are predictable problems.
Yeah. But what is probably a terrible idea is just cutting off your significant other, not talking to them if you're long distance. Like, you do want to carve out some time with them. If you'd like them to be there when the exam is done.
It might be revealing of the relationship. So
it's possible. But if you think they would like them to be there at the end, it's probably a good idea to spend a wee bit of effort to let them know that they're still loved.
True. But it could be an opportunity to see that maybe they're not the person who's going to support you in your goals.
But don't take on a breakup during the test. That's like terrible.
You can make that decision a couple of weeks after the exam. Just give yourself a deadline of like 2 weeks post-exam when you're not making any major life decisions. I think is a generally good idea.
I think that's a wonderful idea. And, because you have to set these boundaries even around things outside of significant others. So, for instance, sometimes I'll have bar studiers write to us on the website or something like that and say, what am I going to do because I don't think I want to be a lawyer and I'm studying for the bar? And I'm like, this is not the time to have this conversation.
Think about this later. And then decide.
I know. I was like, what's great? Having a law license. That's the only thing you need to do right now. Like, get the law license. You can decide to do something else later.
Yeah, it's like this is not a productive thing to be spending your time on right now. Just put that aside. Not to say you don't need to think about it. Just put it aside for right now and focus on what you need to focus on.
So, like, don't decide that this person is or is not, the person you want to spend the rest of your life with.
Or like, this is not the time to be having like discussions about when you're going to have children.
No, moving in, like how many kids you want. No, money, like, no. So anyway, do what you can, but be honest, set boundaries, and communicate. And then you guys can, weather the storm. And then maybe you two at your wedding someday can have your significant other talk about the bar in their wedding vows.
Wow, dare to dream.
I know. Hashtag life goals. Okay. And with that, I think we're out of time. It's really good he doesn't listen to the podcast. I want to take a second to remind you to check out our blog at barexamtoolbox.com, which is full of helpful tips to help you prepare and stay sane as you study for the bar exam. You can also find information on our website about our courses, tools, and one-on-one tutoring programs to support you as you study for the UBE or California bar exam. If you enjoyed this episode of the Bar Exam Toolbox podcast, please take a second to leave a review and rating on your favorite listening app. We'd really appreciate it. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. If you are still in law school, you might also like to check out our Law School Toolbox podcast as well. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Alison at lee@barexamtoolbox.com or Alison@barexamtoolbox.com, or you can always contact us via our website contact form at barexamtoolbox.com. Thanks for listening, and we will talk soon.